Hi guys, and welcome to another dungeon video. So the footage in the background for this video, in case you're not aware, if you just skipped to part 3 for whatever random reason, this is the final dungeon. This is Sylvaris Exile. It's a very, very long dungeon. We should get quite a few blog posts out of it. We did the Quaggan on the first 2 parts, and I'm going to be doing another blog post from Sylvari week on this part, and I don't know, it'll probably end up 2 parts as well, as they usually do. But we've got loads and loads more footage left, so hopefully my plan is that we'll get through into a Sylvari week. If we don't, then I'll be doing some I'm not sure whether there'll be dungeons in particular, but there'll be some kind of random Guild Wars footage stuff. And you know what? I might actually, I'm tempted to, because I really enjoyed doing this with you guys. It was really awesome. And it's been like 3 weeks now, and I'm already kind of missing it a little bit. So when I do those other blog posts, or when new blog posts come out, what I may end up doing is just tweeting and saying, hey, if anybody's about, I'm about to film some filler footage for the background. And then that'll be what we do. That way we can kind of team up. It wouldn't be like a scheduled thing like I'd done before, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so yeah, we've got Sylvari week. There's oh, actually, hold on. Before we go about Sylvari week, one thing you guys did mention, actually, you'll see in the party window back there, Norgu is in the team. One of my heroes, Norgu, is there. First, one question I got is, why are you picking Norgu instead of Gwen? Well, that's because I don't really like Gwen that much, and Norgu doesn't get enough love. Come on, Norgu was awesome. He was a dick, but he was awesome. So that's why I always pick Norgu. But the reason why we've got a hero here, and this is a bit of a shame, I've got to be honest, I was a bit upset about this. Basically, what happened was, and I almost left this footage in, when we first teamed up for Sylvaris Exile, we went in there with a full team. There were 70, as you saw, like when we did the big wave, there were absolutely loads of people there. We did have a full team. The other guy was a warrior that was there. I'm pretty sure it was someone who'd never been on a run before. But we went into the first sort of group of the first floor of the dungeon and tried to see how we'd do. And we were just doing really badly. We did over aggro, to be honest, but we were doing really badly. We were really struggling. We were in there for about 15-20 minutes, I think, if I remember rightly, and we just were not doing very well. And then the guy quit out, so we're like, oh shit. We kept trying to go forward a little bit, but it just wasn't going anywhere. It was right at the start. So instead, we decided to zone back out. I did kind of want to add another human there, but we'd already been going for a while. The B team, or whatever you want to call it, would have left already, and I couldn't really see anyone around, so I thought, you know what will really help here is a Mesmer with panic. So look, let's just add the hero. It's a shame, because out of all the dungeons, we never had anybody quit out. And, you know, I don't hold it against the guy. Pugging is a horrible experience, especially when it's not going very well. But, you know, these things happen. But once we added Norgu, it went absolutely fine. As you'll see in the footage, we absolutely steamrolled the dungeon. As I said last time, the other team actually took a lot longer to go through than we did, but they stuck at it, and massive kudos to them for actually keeping up with it. But yeah, so that's basically the story of Norgu there. A few of you asked. I thought I mentioned it actually in part 1 and 2, but I guess not. But yeah, back to the Sylvari. There's a lot to say about the Sylvari. There really is so much to say about the Sylvari. And I think people go on about the Sylvari a lot, and they're the focus of a lot of blogs. And when Sylvari week came out, people kept talking about all these different kinds of things with the Sylvari, particularly the Sylvari sexuality and stuff like that. And I think people went about the Sylvari so much. That could be one reason that I'm and it's not that I dislike the race, don't get me wrong. I think they're a cool race, and I think they do add something to Guild Wars, but I'm not a massive fan of the Sylvari. There are definitely aspects of them that I really like, but my personal opinion on them is they're okay. They're not anything massively special that we haven't seen in other MMOs, and I do kind of question the amount of attention they get, and to this day they still get so much attention. I think another thing is the main reason why it annoys me, you know, you can say, oh, people can think what they think, what does it matter? The thing that annoys me a little bit really is that as soon as like the Sylvari were announced, and they were in interviews and stuff before this, but as soon as they were announced, pretty much every lore interview solidly was dominated. At least over 50% of the questions were to do with the Sylvari. And even still, months and months later, that is still the same kind of thing. I talked about a couple of months ago this interview that came out with Rhys Osby. Really good interview. But once again, it had so many Sylvari questions, and I don't know what it is specifically. I think it's a part of the fact that the Sylvari are kind of replacing the Elves. I've always said this, in Guild Wars 2, all the races are unique. They all have their own elements, and they're definitely not the same as races that you find in other MMOs, but ArenaNet have definitely picked certain archetypes that you can find in other MMOs because they know that that's what a lot of players are going to be looking for. Like, they've got their small race and stuff. And the Sylvari are, and I hate the fact that people see them this way. I really do, because they're not, but the Sylvari are the Elves, and this is what people go on about, and I guess people just really care about that kind of race archetype a lot more. I'm not sure. But the Sylvari, you know, apart from all that, the race itself, I think it's quite cool. And in fact, before Sylvari Week came out, I was really kind of into them. I didn't like their original design. I'll talk about this more in a little bit, the design of the Sylvari and what happened there. But I didn't really like their original design, but I loved the lore to do with them. The Sylvari were the fifth race. They were the hidden race. They were the secret, mysterious race. They were a bit like the Deep Sea Dragon at that point. Eye of the North had introduced all of the different races, and there was all this kind of interesting stuff that we learned about the Asura and the Norn, and we already had the Char, of course, and the humans. They were all there, but then all we had on the Sylvari was this cryptic plant, this cryptic image of a plant growing at the end, and we'd heard about them in the movement of the world, but that was it. And it was really, really interesting. They were very mysterious. We didn't really know what was going on with them. We knew kind of that they'd be like tree people, I guess, but we didn't know what much past that, and it was really, really cool. And that's kind of still there. The only thing with Guild Wars 2, they've given us so much information now. The only thing that still holds that position to me in Guild Wars 2 is the Deep Sea Dragon. Of course, you've got 5 races and 5 dragons as well, and the Deep Sea Dragon remains the one that we don't really know anything about. And in fact, I think it's that same interview actually that I was just talking about. In that they say, oh hey, why haven't you talked more about the Deep Sea Dragon? And they're doing it specifically because you need a bit of mystery, and I think that there is a lot of terror that can come out of not knowing what's about, and I think if they pull that off in-game and translate that in-game, that could be quite cool. So this mysterious, deadly 5th dragon that's shrouded in mystery and the depths of the sea, and you can never really know much about it. That's awesome. I love that idea. But anyway, the Sylvari aren't like that anymore. They're definitely not. It kind of came out a little bit, I guess, before Sylvari Week, but when Sylvari Week hit, we just got a fair bit of information about them, and this is something that a lot of people get intrigued by and ask all kinds of questions about, so I guess we'll just go through as we do. So we're in the August blog, actually. Last part we were in July 2011, we're now in August, and the month, there was actually so many blogs in this month. This was basically Gamescom was going to be coming up, so I think they mentioned it a couple of times, but the month opened up on the 2nd of August with some talk about sound recording and sound design, which was pretty cool. Then we went up into, there were 3 different posts on sound design. That's ridiculous. Then they did a little blog post, but David Campbell did it, that said next week is Sylvari Week, and there's a couple of little bits of cool concept art on there, and they explain the usual. They say that there's lore on Wednesday, there's a video on Thursday, and then there's a nice long narrative on Friday. So it's the same kind of thing as we've come to expect, but there are 2 little bits of cool concept art there, which I may as well show you. The Sylvari are living, if you've been watching my Eye of the North Let's Play, you'll know specifically where they are. They're in the Tarnished Coast. We saw the Pale Tree right at the end of Eye of the North, which is pretty cool. And they remain there in Guild Wars 2. So all the concept art is really going to be around there. You can't really call it the Maguma anymore, because the Maguma's kind of become the Maguma Waste. It's like all dead up there as far as we can see. But the Tarnished Coast is still very luscious, and that's where the Sylvari are. So then we get another blog post by Regina saying, talking about Pax Prime. And then Kristen Perry came out with a blog post. I'm not going to read you this blog post. However, I could put a few of those images in there. We're going to get a nice montage of images, I suppose. She talks about redesigning the Sylvari. Now, this is really cool. When the first trailer for Guild Wars 2 came out, when it first came out, ArenaNet seemed to have a pretty decent idea of the different things that they wanted to do with the game. But the Sylvari probably, and this is just my speculation, but the Sylvari probably didn't have as much love put into them as the other races did. So the first trailer came out, and we saw the Sylvari as essentially humans, but with different tinted skin. You can go back, they never changed that. Oh, did they change the original trailer? No, they didn't, but they sort of altered the images. Yeah, you can go back to the original trailer, right, and you can watch it, and you will see that the Sylvari in that trailer look just like humans with different coloured skin. And it was that way for a very, very long time. That was their design. That was kind of how everybody saw them. On the forums, I remember we used to have discussions about it, and it pretty quickly dawned on me and a few others that the Sylvari really didn't look that interesting. They were these mysterious things from the movement of the world and stuff, and now we kind of saw them, and we didn't know much on the lore side. Granted, we still didn't know very much, but we knew how they looked, and we all know how people judge books by their cover, and it just wasn't really that amazing, the initial Sylvari design, and it seems like ArenaNet didn't really think the same either, because in the background, this woman here, Kristen Perry, I think she was the one who did the dye system, essentially, in her own time, she started working on a redesign for the Sylvari, because she kind of asked herself, hey, we have this race here and we think they're okay in the game, but do we really love the race? Do we really like them like we like the other races? And I think the developers basically came to a conclusion where they were like, well, no, they're okay. I get the feeling that they just kind of very quickly made a design for that first trailer, so they had something to show there, and they hadn't really put much thought into it initially. I'm not sure whether that's true. Maybe they did put a lot of thought into it, or maybe they didn't think it was that important at the time. But But she really took it to heart, and she wanted the Sylvari to become this distinct race that she would love and everybody would love. So in her own time, she just started doing concept art and doing all this work on redesigning the Sylvari, and eventually she came out with this. And this we were made aware of the redesign a very long time before it was actually revealed, and it was like this huge topic for ages. Oh, what's the redesign going to be like? I've always wanted the Sylvari to look less elf-like, so that people would stop thinking that they're elf, even though, yes, really, ArenaNet are trying to tap into that archetype, I suppose. I wanted them to look way less elf-like, so that nobody would ever confuse them anymore, and I wanted them to become a lot more entish. I wanted them to look a lot more rough. There was a definite split in the community. Some people wanted elves, pretty much, and some people wanted these more sort of Ent-like things. And Kristen tried to appeal to both groups, and she did some really cool stuff. I will have been throwing up the images as we go through, as I do that little speech there. As you can see, you can make them in either kind of direction, which I think is really cool. A lot of it, their clothes are really leafy and stuff. But basically, there's this huge blog post here talking about all the stuff that she did to try and appeal to both groups, and all the different things she'd done, and all the things that had been worked on to try and make the Sylvari actually look like living plants rather than people with green skin, which is really cool. They redesigned Kaith, and then actually the later trailer they did, I think it was the Gamescom 2011 trailer, they actually did a shot that was in the first trailer of the 5 races with the Destiny's Edge walking side by side. They redid that shot, but this time with the new Kaith in her new design, which was really cool. So you can kind of see both versions now. I definitely prefer the Sylvari now. I think they are awesome. We've heard things that aren't even listed in this blog post. I'll put a link to it, by the way. That we've heard things that aren't even listed in this blog post, like how they can have luminescence and stuff like that, so they glow at night in certain areas, like certain plants. I think that's awesome. That is so cool. So the design is pretty sound, but you know, the way they look really isn't everything, as we all know, and there's a lot of cool lore going on with them, a lot of stuff to talk about. So I think that's evidenced by the fact I've already been talking for 13 minutes and we've not even started the first blog. So the next blog post in August was called The Sylvari Soul, Angel McCoy on writing the Sylvari. Let's see, I don't think this is the one we want. Oh yeah, it is. Okay, so this is the one with the little audio clips. We haven't had these for a while, have we? So here we go, I guess. This is our introduction to the Sylvari, the 5th mysterious race in Guild Wars 2. My name is Angel Lee McCoy. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Maybe it's Angle. Anyway, and I'm one of several writers on the Guild Wars 2 design team. We've been moulding Tyria into a living, breathing world, and I'm here to share some audio clips of in-game dialogue and give you some insight into the Sylvari, Tyria's newest race. Okay, so Sylvari basics. All of the races of Guild Wars 2 are fun to write, but Sylvari rank in the top 3 for me. That line always makes me laugh a little bit, because it's like, alright, there's 5 races, so does that really have much weight saying that? I love how their virtue blends with their innocence, and then contrasts with the darkness of the world surrounding them. This disparity illuminates the sacrifices, gallantry, and tragedies of Tyria's war with the dragons. Remarkably, the Sylvari race didn't come into existence until 25 years ago, in game years, when the 12 Firstborn awoke. Since then, new Sylvari have continued to awaken on a regular basis, their numbers growing as time advances. And I think they'll mention very shortly that it keeps going exponentially, and they kind of worked it out to the point where it makes sense in lore that as soon as the release date hits, that kind of explains why there are so many player Sylvari characters, because that's the point that the Pale Tree's grown to, which I think is really cool. Sylvari arrive in the world fully grown. They emerge from pods that grow on the Pale Tree, a magical, sentient tree with its roots deep in Tyria and its branches in the Dream. I think this is really cool. It makes them seem really quite distinct. The Sylvari have got a lot that sets them apart from other races. They really do. They're they're definitely the most alien race. They've got a lot of weird stuff going on with them. And I suppose that is why they talk about the Sylvari so much. It's because there's so many different things to think about and to talk about with them, and they're quite an engaging race on that level, I suppose. You will hear a lot of really weird things about the Sylvari, and I like that they've got so much that makes them distinct. I really do. They leave the Dream, a mystical place where Sylvari memories are collected, and incubate in their pods, then emerge in the world. They bring with them a spectator's understanding of how the world works, having witnessed aspects of it while in the Dream. Their first few days in the world are critical, and they're met by mentors and other newly awakened who help them find their way. Oh man, I'm just, the more I'm reading, I'm all of a sudden thinking of like a million different things I want to talk about, like to do with the Dream and stuff. This is going to be hard to get through. I'm almost 100% sure I'm not going to be able to say everything that I know about the Sylvari, but we'll keep going. Alright. In this series of scenes, a male Sylvari attempts to explain his awakening to a female Norn. Listen in.
Someone told me that Sylvari aren't born, they're hatched. Is that true?
We're born, but in our own way. We're the fruit of our mother, the Pale Tree.
For us, birth is a matter of blood and pain. It's the infant's first great battle. Many don't make it.
And for us, birth is like falling from a great height, all the way down to the hard ground. Not all survive the fall.
No parents? Who cares for you when you're small and weak?
We're not born small like you. We emerge full size from our cocoons and immediately enter school.
Born full-sized? Maybe your race is stronger than I thought.